Hey guys, this is Mr. Breen, and in this video I'm going to talk about economies of scale. So before I get into this concept too much, I want to take a look at these specific words. Oftentimes we use the word economy to refer to a country's production or the market for something in a country. But what it often meant in an older time, something like cheapness. You might hear somebody say that's very economical. Okay. What that means is it's sort of thrifty. And this word scale means basically size. So what an economy of scale is, it's cheapness that comes from size. In many industries, there are factors that make it so that bigger sized companies can produce their good more cheaply and therefore offer it at a lower price to consumers. So what are the sources of some of these economies of scale? Well, one major source is high startup costs. High startup costs. This is an obvious candidate to cause economies of scale because if something costs a lot, before you can even make 1 unit of the good, then let's actually get an example. So let's say you have a business where your fixed costs, what you have to pay before you can even start producing, are $1 million. Okay, $1 million. That means if you want to produce, and let's say that your variable costs, in other words, the extra cost from producing some of the good, is just like a buck per unit of the good. So in order to produce 1 unit, you're going to have to spend $1,000,001. Okay. In order to produce 2, you're going to have to spend $1,000,002. And in order to produce 3, you're going to have to spend $1,000,003. Now the average cost here of producing 1 is actually just going to be $1,001,001. But if you produce 2, your average costs go down to 500,001. So that's $1,002 divided by 2. And then if you produce 1,003, your average costs go down to 333,334.33, repeating. You can see that the more this company produces, the lower their average cost is going to be. Okay, so what else can cause economies of scale? Well, economies of scale can also be caused by specialization. So large companies have a lot of different things that they do, and because they can do a lot of different things, their employees can hyper specialize in one specific part of the production process. It would cost a smaller company a lot more, or maybe not even be possible, for them to train an employee to that level of technical proficiency, the level that is allowed by that kind of hyper specialization that can go on in bigger companies. Finally, economies of scale can be caused by network externalities. Sometimes goods become less valuable to people as more and more people have them, like prestige items, like a really fancy car. But when it comes to network externalities, we're talking about goods that are actually more valuable the more other people use them. So some good examples of this are actually social networking sites, right? If you're the only person on a social networking site, then that social networking site isn't actually worth very much to you. But if there are millions or even billions of other people on that site, then that network is worth a lot to you. If you think about it, the social networking market really wouldn't be able to support a large number of small companies, each with their own technical staff, because each individual company wouldn't have that many people. Instead, those people would probably gravitate toward one larger company. Now, there aren't always economies of scale. Sometimes there are diseconomies of scale, and diseconomies of scale often result from administrative costs. Administrative costs. Okay. Running large organizations is very difficult. And sometimes when a company becomes very large, its different departments have a difficult time communicating with each other and coordinating with each other. And sometimes that can actually raise their costs of doing business. In those cases, oftentimes each of those departments would have been better off as their own company. So I want to leave you with a couple principles that a lot of students seem to have a difficult time with. The first is that there are not always economies of scale. Those don't always exist. Okay. Not every industry has them, and every industry has them in different amounts. And a second principle is that economies of scale are not caused by having big companies. So big companies don't create economies of scale. Okay, big companies don't create economies of scale. This is not going to happen. Okay. Instead, economies of scale tend to lead to larger companies. The economies of scale already existed, okay, but because there are high economies of scale, we tend to see big companies in that industry. And again, not every industry has big economies of scale. That's why not all industries are dominated by a few big companies, but many are.